Hi, my name is Arch Fuston, board president for Every Kid Sports. And today we have the opportunity to speak with Dr. Chuck Morris, founder of Fulcrum Performance and the CEO of the NFL Alumni Health Lab. To say Dr. Morris is, or Dr. Chuck, as he likes to be referred to, is fascinating and interesting is an understatement. His life work combines the science, the technology, and the psychology that elevates our mind-body connection and helps athletes and individuals increase and enhance their physical performance, all the while addressing those inevitable individual needs. And today we're going to talk about the impact and importance of participation in youth sports on the developmental aspects of the brain. And not only the kind of the physical structural impact of the brain, but what it does to the mind and for the mind when a kid is involved in youth sports. Super excited to share this with you. It is fascinating work that he's doing and incredibly insightful. So with that, let's get at it.
Well, hello, everyone. I am Dr. Chuck Morris, not Norris. I am not an MD. I'm a PhD, which just means I'm a crazy scientist. I've been specializing in human performance full-time for about 29 years now. Been blessed to do it quite honestly and literally around the world, specializing in functional neuroscience and human performance. We've done the full spectrum of clients. We have Olympic gold medalists and MVP sports champions. We have top executives, and more importantly, we have stay-at-home dads and moms. So for my entire adult life, after getting out of the Army, I just really desire to help people accomplish their goals. And when I thought about what seemed to be the biggest thing that held most people back was being in pain, lack of energy, and their wellness. So for me, we decided, how do we help those three things? And then how do we quantify that to make it repeatable? How do we make complicated things about the human body easy to understand? And it doesn't matter what we know, if we can't express it to you and you use it in your everyday life. And that has brought me in front of kings and princes and all kinds of wonderful people. We are currently we've just launched the NFL Alumni Health Lab. So they are a brick and mortar partnership with our Fulcrum Labs, where we quantify wellness, we quantify health, and it's really pretty cool. It's one of the most sciencey, computer crazy labs. It's something like off of the old Rocky and the Russian movie. But we do crazy things like give you your whole workout in 9 minutes. I know, it sounds crazy, it's okay. And we do brain health, and we're gonna roll those out around the country. And the purpose of it is, what if we took what was available, just the top 1%, and we deployed that and made it available for everybody, from our young people, fitness and sports, to our senior population, whom I call industrial athletes, right? So that's our mission. We do it at a great level. We've been blessed to do it for a really long time, and we're excited for these partnerships. And what's driven me like a madman is I figure when it's all said and done, I have to leave something behind that they say we did something with our time here. So that's Coach Chuck, which is commonly known as Coach Chuck. In a nutshell, thank you for listening, and I'm excited to be here to share information with you because that's what we do.
Okay, let's start with this. What's your theory on how sports mimic life?
I love it. I love it. So in life, we have conflicts. And if we think about the human experience, no matter who we are or what our demographic is, right? We're red-blooded human beings. And sure, this can be debated, but I would say it's fair to say it fits pretty neatly into this framework. We first learn how to respond to conflict or our desires really young. So the first thing we do is we cry, we whine, we make noise as a child. I'm not getting my way. I have to make noise and draw attention to myself. Okay.
Come into the world entitled, right?
Right.
It's awesome.
You're not getting sleep, or I'm doing something to make noise, draw attention. I want you to be uncomfortable, pay attention to me. I need something. That's the one way. So as toddlers, we get a little bit older. Let's say now we're maybe 3 or 5. Then we go from making noise to manipulation. And if anyone's ever had a 3 or 5-year-old, they have a beautiful way of trying to get their way. They'll ask mommy, they'll ask daddy. Well, daddy said, mommy said, Nana said I could. And they try to put one against the other. And who taught you that? It's like, no one taught a kid down to say, how do you manipulate, right? Just trying to get my way. There's a conflict. I want something. You're not giving it to me. So I'm going to make noise. Then I try to manipulate leadership. So I try to manipulate the authority in my life. The third thing is then I become physical. Then I throw things. I hit people. I punch my brother, my sister, because they're not giving me what I want. So sports, think of sports like a family. So if your child is playing sports, this is the second group of people that young person will see often, which by default, when we see people more often, we feel we have a little bit more value, and I can do a little more to them because they want to band. So sports team, family. But in sports, I learned that those 3 ways are not the only ways, and those 3 ways are unacceptable. Because when I'm playing sports, coach, teammates, the structures teach me, hey, I need attention. But what's the appropriate way to get attention? And we kind of glaze over it, right? We think it's automatic. But if you don't learn it in sports, you learn it by consequence in middle and high school. Because I never had a proper experience to teach me how to deal with it. And when we play organized sports, no matter how great or lackluster the coaching is, we put our young people in a framework of, hey, this is what's acceptable. This is how we handle conflict. And when I have a conflict, these are the processes that we do. Every team has a culture, but it's always based on that culture working together and figuring out how to move forward. So that's the first thing I think about, right? And that's life.
Awesome. What's so cool about that is it speaks directly to our human nature to react to the world around us. Whereas this in sport allows us to learn how to respond to different situations in a way that's in alignment with everything else that's happening around us within this structure. So yeah, what a wonderful differentiation between reacting to life and responding to it. Awesome.
Right.
So give us maybe an example of how you've seen that played out, one situation versus the other.
Awesome. I'll give something that's very common, the good old-fashioned run. So the young athlete does something that technically when I joined the team, I agreed I was going to follow this social reality, right? So that young athlete, she says something negative to her teammate, and the coach says, go run a lap. Why have to go run a lap? So they're trying to manipulate the authority. Go run a lap. There's no capital punishment. There is a sense of go be by yourself. Go figure out what you said and what you did. Go figure out how that worked against what we agreed upon, and go figure out a better way to do it. And by the time you come back, you should be better. And if not, keep running. Mm-hmm. Coach, why did I have to? You still don't understand? Keep running. Because technically it's in there, right? So an example of the opposite of that would be the kid that's walking with their friends. They've never been inside of that kind of framework. And they want to go into the store. Hey, let's go in the store and we're going to go grab a soda. We're going to grab a pop. And the other kid says, well, I don't want to do that because if I do that, I'm going to be late getting home. And one kid says, well, that's what I want to do. Well, I can't do that because I have to get back. Now, instantly, because they're not in agreement, The kid that wants to go outside of the plan of we're supposed to go straight home now becomes an aggressor. Now they're saying, hey, well, if you don't want to go with me, then our relationship is tethered, right? There's some negative tone. There's something that says that you are negative, you're against me because I don't know how else to respond because I want to do something and you want to do something else. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Two very different value structures getting conflicted with one another. One sees the value of getting home on time. The other sees the value of getting that soda pop and enjoying themselves on the way there. So yeah.
Don't we all want soda pop?
Well, yeah, to some degree, sure. That's so fascinating. And like when does flexibility with what somebody else, what their wants and desires are come into play, or versus when does sticking to the plan the right thing to do? And you can imagine the conflicts that kids have with that just on their daily experience. What impact does that have, those little conflicts that kids experience, maybe even repeatedly? What impact does that have on them, their neurology, their memory, and how they organize experiences in their brain to impact them further down the road? What impact does that have?
Yeah, that's great. So there's a phenomenon that's referred to as decision fatigue. And a great study that was done with some legal people overseas. And it showed that we have so much room for decisions, call it a bucket of decisions. And the further we get into the day, the less we have remaining. And the lower we get into that bucket, the more negative generally those decisions become. And the definition of negative, meaning those decisions are not in alignment with the standard way I live my life, right? Caring about people, caring about myself, those decisions become very self-centered and just least benefit. So in a micro scenario, let's call that decision fatigue just one day. And as kids are going through making these decisions, the more often they're getting to the bottom of that bucket and not understanding that they're at the bottom of the bucket, those negative experiences, they begin to think that's who they are. Because the memory remembers the negative experiences easier than it does the positive experiences because there's a danger connected to it, right?
Absolutely.
So if our kids keep doing that and they're not aware that, no, that's not who you are. That's just a consequence of you're tired, you're hungry, your blood sugars are low. But if they keep making those decisions over and over again, and we don't put them into a healthy framework, like organized sports that identifies it and teaches it, and how do I process and push through it, then they begin to think that negative experience is an expression of who they actually are. And then it becomes, in their mind, their character, when that's not true. So neurologically, if it does nothing else, it wears down that decision fatigue without the appropriate life coaching through sports to help me identify that.
Oh, it's so powerful. So powerful. And we think about sport as developing the coordination and the physical aspects of children, but how does it develop how does it strengthen their decision fatigue tolerance?
I love it. Oh my goodness, this is beautiful. So without going too far down a rabbit hole, here's a great example. Another proven study, we can get to the notes later. An athlete so our brain has but so much attention. You can only pay but so much attention. There's a limited amount of attention. But our capacity to process information to much extent that we can measure seems to be limitless. So we can process, unmeasurable information, but I can only give but so much attention. Now, think about that in regards to when I play sports. I'm playing baseball. I get up to the diamond. I get on base. I have my bat, and there's crowd noise. There's coach noise. There are my teammates. There's a wind, there's the feel of the grass, there's a smell, there's a bat, there's a picture. So all of this is happening, but my brain has to figure out what to give the most amount of attention to. Yep. Because if all I care about is the noise, I get hit in the head with the ball. So likewise in life, the more I learn how to filter through all of the noise and see what I should focus on, what's most relevant at this point to accomplish the goal. How does that not translate right over to the dinner table? How does that not translate over to bio in algebra class? Because my friends, the noise, the tapping, the air conditioner, but the mission is to get this lesson. And without making a hard conscious effort, but just out of pattern, that same pattern crosses over. So
absolutely,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And the challenge with that is that whole idea isn't innate, right? It takes somebody to like tell you to do that for you to, because the brain just deletes, distorts, and generalizes everything that's coming in. And right. Unless you know when and where to focus and really how to focus, you're just kind of a victim of the world around you.
Arch, that is so good. That is so good. And that's why you do what you do with every kid's sports, because a lot of times we do think it's innate. We think it's some magical thing that's pre-wired, but it isn't. It's taught, it's coached, and it's mastered. There is a mastery that happens that evolves with the human experience. I mean, that is such a great thing. And and I'm biased because just in human performance and what it does I can't think of another mechanism that we have that is as efficient, as long-standing, as transferable and transformative, playing multiple sports, as sports. When attempting to teach that and teach it in a way that where the brain's getting a pattern, and then I'm also getting a conscious will factor. And it's when we think about the benefits, there's so much that our generation and the generation before us that we're benefiting from, and we think it's just because of our upbringing and it was random. It wasn't random. Many of us played some expression of organized sports, and that's how we learned.
Absolutely, yeah. It's oh my gosh, it's one of life's greatest teachers. That's for sure. And the more awareness we can bring, coaches can bring, parents can bring, the more awareness we can provide kids on where to put their focus versus just the performance side of it, the better.
Yes.
The better. The more whole athlete they become, the more whole human they become, and the more love of the game they can have for it. Because it's not about the performance. It's about being a better human. It's building training your human.
That's it. That's it.
What's your I have so many questions. What's your big overarching takeaway from everything that we've talked about so far, that if a parent or a coach were to take away one thing from this, what would that one thing be?
It would be that you cannot put a true monetary value on the benefits that your child will receive from the coaching and the life skill and the brain programming that happens from playing organized sports that goes to the rest of their lives. We can't even totally quantify how significant it is. And if you didn't do anything else, but that, no matter how good or bad the coaching is, how the program, none of that matters. Getting your young person in organized sports helps them have the tools that they need to be a better person and win at the game of life.
Is there a certain age in youth development where they're more more being imprinted on the world around them, their brains being more imprinted on, that it makes it even more important at a certain age for a kid to be experience sports in this context?
Great question. There is a lot of common thought that the kids should start really young for this theory of playing some type of high-end league or pro sports. Most of the information doesn't really support that. That is a misnomer. That's just something that was made up and we ran with it at some point. I'll give it to you this way. A very anecdotal and observational study with middle school. So as many middle school teachers as I know, a lot of times if you speak to teachers, middle school is they feel is the most impactful moment for young people. So if you can get your young person playing sports in middle school at that age, that's going to be phenomenal. That is still enough time for them to be able to make a turn. When they get into high school, the only thing that happens is the social network changes. But again, sports still becomes easier for them to see, quite honestly. So I don't think it's ever too late to get involved. I know, well, we won't name them, but I know significant people that as adults didn't play sports until they became an adult, and it still helped them be better leaders. They understood their teams better, their companies better, because of this new social contact. So I would say it's never too young. It's never too old to start. And it's negligible between starting really young and starting older.
Okay, excellent. And we'll get deeper into that age thing here in a minute. How about a little bit more on the brain? And when we think about a child's brain, the physical structure of the brain, how is it impacted, the physical structure impacted through playing youth sports versus not playing youth sports?
Awesome. So without getting too sciencey, so allow me to use a common vernacular that I think will help us all be on the same page. Picture the concept of the brain is growing, and as the brain is growing, it is creating patterns. And each pattern has a primary objectives. Certain patterns are to help me move in space. Certain patterns are to help me understand space and things around me. So as a young person is playing sports, there's a pattern of learning how to function in space. What does it mean to step, to balance, to jump, to run, to chew gum and walk at the same time?
It's just proprioception.
So, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So what does that mean, and how does that develop? So when we think about that, and we think about what's really happening, there's two primary things that are happening. Or, like you said, we get into the technical, we get into the proprioceptors, but then we're also getting into the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. So we're also getting into stress and stress hormones. So think of the signaling, the neurological signaling, the electronic current. Also, there's a process of hormones and the chemical reaction, that's stress, right? So they work together, one cueing the other. So as we're playing sports and kids' brains are adapting and growing, if we just picked stress, the more efficiently we teach our young people to manage stress and be aware of it, they process that faster.
Yep.
And let's say the signal just jumps back and forth for no other, just for ease.
It's on or off, right? Threat
Right.
or thrive, threat or thrive, threat or thrive.
And the longer we go from doing that, if it had to jump from point A to point B, physically, the electronic current, the jump to neurons, they become further apart. So it physically becomes neurologically more challenging to manage stress because that signal has to get from here to here. More chronic stress gets further and further apart. So the brain literally is becoming challenged in how to manage stress and then chronic stress and then all of the things that happen with that, to include the inability to focus. Chronic stress causes the ability to focus in a healthy way to go away.
And that's forming that connection, that gap is forming at a very, very, very young age. We associate stress with like, adults in the working world or in college, but like our preparation for that is happening years before.
Yes.
And so the more that we can engage our kids in sport more from a place of purpose, which would be thrive based versus perhaps performance and competition, which can often be that sympathetic side of the nervous system, that threat based, that's going to have a massive impact on that synaptic connection, the distance in that synaptic connection. That's fascinating. Fascinating.
Sports. Can you imagine who knew?
Totally.
So not put your kids in sports. What kind of parent are you?
So how do you differentiate brain and mind? How do you look at those different, or are they?
That is a great debate. I do believe they are not one and the same.
I agree.
And this is one of the ways I express it. There is a difference between a thought and my thought. And here's my explanation of that. My brain, like we talked about in the beginning, is bringing in all types of information. It's processing that information based on past experiences and my interpretation of those experiences. So it's just data. So my brain is processing information, it's taking the data, and it's presenting to me an outcome. But then my mind, my conscious will decides if I accept that data as it is presented. So I hear one of my colleagues say something about me, they have a tone, and my brain tells me last time someone spoke to me that tone, they didn't like me, and they were out to get me. That's the data. And then my conscious will says, well, that may have been good data, but wrong interpretation. I think that person just has a cough. I think maybe their morning pattern just got thrown off. So that's a really basic concept, but it's really important. And that's how I believe it is a thought that I can then make my thought, which actually goes into trauma and processing trauma, things of that nature. But
that's deep, man. There's a lot there. What I hear though that's so exciting about this is the element of choice, of choosing whether or not this is something that I'm going to take on as me, as part of my identity.
Right.
And so if you take that element of choice and the awareness of the choice, and you apply that to a little kid in playing sports, and what it means to strike out, what it means to get tackled for a loss, what it means to double fault in a tennis match. I mean, like, what's the power in the opportunity to experience this and to learn something different? That element of choice to perceive that. Again, it goes back to how the brain processes that, its internal representation of that situation. Is it a synapses connection like this or like this? Is it a threat or is it a thrive? Like how does a parent take all of this and distill it down in a really simple way to coach their kid in those moments where they can either create a very kind of stressful memory out of this or a very choice-based learning memory out of it?
I would present the thought that it is not a personal indictment against the kid. It is surely a cause and effect and an opportunity to make an adjustment. That's all it is. It is nothing more than that. I tell my parents for years, your job is to empower your kids and support them. My job is to correct them, because when I correct them, they hear the voice of coach that is just trying to help me be better. So, but when mom and dad correct me, I may look at it as I am not meeting the expectation and my value gets attached to it. So as a parent, the more I can take that thought or that concept out of it, the better my kid is. And that doesn't mean it's okay to fumble and quit. It just means that the Army said something to me. I used to love it. The Army says, I'm a vet, adapt, adjust, and drive on. There is no time to wallow in it. Adapt what's happening, make the adjustment, and move on. It's not personal. It's not you. It's just information. So to boil it down for a parent, understand that you have to pull away from it being a personal indictment against your kid as much as it is, we're just correcting something. That's it.
That's so powerful.
Mm.
And think about from a parent's standpoint, the pressure that relieves on them and how they engage their kid and motivate their kid and reward their kid on their sports experience. It's truly one way. The way you're talking about is a very pure expression of really love that you show towards your child, because what they're doing inside in their mind is a reflection of that as well, right? It's a am I loved? Like that's like one of the core basic needs that we have to have. And boy, what a wonderful, wonderful way to show your kid that you love them by putting them in sports and creating this dialogue with them around it.
And Arch,
awesome.
That same thing applies, and I won't name any names, to MVP and Olympic champions.
For sure.
You get the same result.
And probably as an adult athlete as well, right? I mean,
yes,
we're all human, whether we're 9 years old or 39 years old.
Environment and the stress of it, and what I begin to believe begins to turn my nervous system down and tell my body what we cannot do, and or confuses the nervous system because I can't determine where we are. Are we in a good place or a bad place? Is this dangerous? Is this not dangerous? So the body then gets into this concept of the brain's second most basic responsibility is to keep us alive at all times, right? So we did great practice, but I didn't understand as an individual the appropriate preparedness for my mind's ability to process this live fire, as I call it, right? So because the mind doesn't know and is confused, and the brain leans on the mind for interpretation, the body just goes to stay alive, stay balanced. So all of a sudden, do you really want to run very fast and lean over because you want to lose balance? And I could fall and I could hurt myself. So you slow down just a little bit. Your timing with the stick lacrosse is off just a little bit because, again, my mind is not interpreting the information for my brain. So in my opinion, that's what's happening there. We have a great practice athlete, young person that has a challenge performing to that same level of skill and desire and drive in a live game.
Dr. Chuck, where does an athlete, young or old, where does their perception of consequence come into play when you get into competition, into whether you play in a parasympathetic state or sympathetic state?
It is, to your point, what you mentioned before, technically the brain doesn't know any different because it's all data, right? And it goes back to your mind-brain concept. So the young person has to, in practice, give all. If I'm not trained in a safe space of understanding what it feels like to give all, then I can't do that in a game. So the consequence comes in where there are all these other factors, and because I'm not accustomed to giving all, I have this the consequence concept of fear of being embarrassed, fear of failing, because I have no practice of giving all. So the true consequence is not me getting injured. My consequence is I don't want to fail and receive what that means. That makes sense.
Oh man, to make it really simple, the fear of hurt is more to, quote, the ego than it is to the body.
Beautiful. Take away everything I just said. That's the statement.
But even at a young age, when you're like really forming your sense of identity like that, it's in play. And the more that we create the environment and provide the appropriate exposure to playing a certain way and learning certain things and that sense of choice, I mean, it's just crazy where everything that a kid will learn in playing Little League baseball and Pop Warner football and NFL flags, little kids and tennis and everything, how it's going to impact them when they get into school, as they're going to school, through their careers. Gosh, again, you make those patterns. And they translate.
They're patterns. I tell them they're not habits. Habits are personal. No, they're patterns. The patterns.
So let's think then, all of these neurological developmental aspects of playing sports, playing youth sports, and kids that get started earlier obviously have more time and opportunity to strengthen and hone practice that. How about the kids that have been delayed? Like that maybe they don't, for whatever reason, they don't get their start until they're 12, 13, 14 years old. I don't want to so much focus on what's the negative of that, but what might be the benefit of that for them?
I love it. So one of the benefits that have been seen is the social awareness. There's something to be said again about this concern of failing in front of this fear, this pride hit. The social component of pushing through in most scenarios, going into a space where the athletes that have been playing longer are more skilled. How do I interact with that? How do I interact with the concept of I'm starting something and the person is better at it than I am? Are they better than me as a person, or is their skill just better? So the social component often is significant, and it generally translates from the outside looking in. We can generally see it faster with older kids because it's such a shift. Often that young person begins making better decisions. Often that young person slows down before they were someone that would respond really quickly negatively. You see them respond not as fast. There's like this delay of processing. So getting started at whatever that is considered an older age has great benefits. And then because the brain is always learning, they're still going to capture many of the benefits of the younger athlete. But the social and the self-awareness, and I'll go out on a limb a little bit, especially behavioral. There seems to be observationally, there seems to be a significant reality of making better behavioral decisions when older kids begin to play organized sports. And I think it falls back into that consequence thing that you talked about. And so it's so worth it.
Wow. Gosh, we could talk for days about this.
Yeah.
Think about the parent that maybe has to make some really hard decisions on where they use their resources specifically towards their kids. Gosh, I don't even know I don't want to say most important, but like, what would be your most convincing point about, hey, listen, if you only have a fixed number of spend to invest in outside of just your basic needs, why is youth sports the thing to focus on?
I have it. Someone did a touching and moving video some years ago where people were applying for jobs and they were telling them what the job requirements were. And at the end of the video, you saw that the job was being a mom. And everybody broke out in tears like, oh my God, yes, my mom did do all of that. And oh my God, no, she didn't get paid for it. If we think about the value of parenting, be it whomever it is that is the guardian of that young person, whoever that is, uncle, aunt, grandparent, whomever that is, if you can put a value on you and what you mean to that young person, then I would challenge this. Take a portion of that same value, and deploy it to organized sports. Because this is one of the only scenarios where what happens in the principles and things that you want to teach your young person, another adult, another community, another group is going to come alongside you and do life with you to support and echo the same thing. And if the value of that, when you cleanly look at it in any sober mind, is enormous. So if nothing else, the value of you taking a portion of that and thinking that that same value is being, your young person's getting that to a lesser degree from an entire community that's focused on all the things that we just talked about.
Wow.
I don't know where else you get that. I couldn't find it in 29 years.
Wow. And you got to believe that listen, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, they're getting value from that child playing as well. Right? I mean, they're still evolving, they're still developing. What would you like if you could speak to a parent or a guardian that's making the decision? And yeah, we know the benefit it's going to have for that child. What benefit is it going to be for them?
There's so many things that we do. I have 5 children. Don't fall out of your chair. There's so many things that we do in life, and we hope that our children, our grandchildren, we hope that the young person that we're sacrificing for, that we're pouring into them, we hope that one day they understand part of your love for them. They understand part of what it really means. And likewise, we want to see them advance. What happens to you, to me as a parent, when I see that young person accomplish something that they previously couldn't do? It's such a beautiful thing. I don't care if they run with 2 left feet and see them running out fall over. I'm not talking about the scholarship to college yet. I'm talking about being the last person in line, and one day at practice, they're not the last person. The simplicity of being able to catch a baseball when I couldn't do it before. To see not just any human being, but the one you care about, that you invest in, and that you sacrifice your life for, to see them have all of these little wonderful moments of progression, and then they're aware of it, it changes you, it encourages you, it makes you, in many cases, say, okay, I can do it one more day. I can push one more week. I can do that 3rd shift one more time. So that's what I believe.
We're gonna leave it at that. If you're wearing a mic, just drop it, because we're gonna stop right there. Yeah, exactly. We're gonna stop right there. Dr. Chuck, thank you so much for imparting all of this knowledge and wisdom, and even beyond that, just the profound love that you have for all of this, and helping kids and adults just access all of their gifts and talents and strengths, and doing it in a very, very, very healthy way, neurologically healthy, brain healthy, physiologically healthy way. So anything you'd like to add before we say goodbye?
Just thank you. And just because it is accessible doesn't mean it's not valuable. Sometimes we think because we can touch a thing that is not valuable, it is valuable. And every kid's sport is making it a real life, tangible thing. And how do we not do it? Just, that's it for me. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Wonderful. Yeah, oh, fantastic. We will hopefully do this again sometime soon.
Deal.
Okay, thank you.